Hello, everybody.
Hello, and welcome to the Friendly Aussie Podcast.
Hello.
Maurizio.
And
Hello there. How are you doing over there?
Yeah, very well, very well. I'm very pleased to be in your podcast. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, we're really pleased to have you.
Mauricio is a cannabis entrepreneur that has entered the legal cannabis market with probably a pretty unique CBD product, to be honest. It's one of the more highly concentrated CBDs, and we thought we'd bring him on today to kind of talk about how the challenges around coming into the cannabis space in Australia, the regulations, the importation, all of that, and just the general positivity that CBD brings in people's lives.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a long road for me, Josip. It's in terms of when I started and when until now. I guess when not long ago we started being operating where we're operating now. But since the very beginnings, it's been a long road. And as you said, there has been multiple changes in terms of the law and in terms of like getting the licenses and all that sort of stuff that I guess that we can unpack a little bit more. And also the learning curve that it has been for me, for my family, and I also have a personal story with mom just passing no long ago. It's been not even a month, and also seeing, I guess, the impact that it has with her, the palliative care, because I think if it is fair to say, everything in terms of this new venture started because of her. Like all of this started about 4 or 5 years ago, when mom was still obviously alive, and she had problems with sleeping disorders. She was always a very, I don't know, very nervous person. So she had that issue, and the number one thing was that she couldn't actually see or be. She couldn't be prescribed anything else, but I guess opioids or sleeping tablets based on different chemicals, and the side effects of that weren't very positive for her. So that's kind of when the journey started for me in terms of my business, because I really became very curious about why doctors wouldn't prescribe anything else but the traditional pharmaceuticals that I guess we have always heard about them. So I really started doing my own research, and I managed to help mom with products out of Canada. Actually, it was full spectrum product, 1-to-1 in terms of THC and CBD, and that helped mom a great deal to not only fall asleep, have good quality sleep, but also like the side effects were not there for her. So it kind of ticked all the boxes, and at the same time I kind of started seeing the legislation changed in Australia, and because, well, I forgot to mention that my background is actually South American, and mom was in Chile, and I've been here for the last 13 years, I guess. And so the last 4 years when she really started having those problems, and for me, I kind of saw the change in the legislation and being in favor of cannabis, of medicinal cannabis, and then is when I started doing pretty much all the research about the licenses, about what needed to be had in order to be able to, I guess, help any person who wanted to have medicinal cannabis make it accessible for them, and yeah, I mean, it's been a very long road in terms of, as I mentioned at the very beginning, a learning curve in terms of learning about the product, learning about the different compounds that the plant possesses, and also I had the opportunity to travel to a few different destinations where cannabis is actually legal. So 3.5 years ago, I went to Oregon. That was when my son was actually born, my son Luca. The wife wasn't very happy because I was traveling right after she had been given birth, but I guess it was all for work and research purposes. So I flew to Oregon. I spent about a week over there, and I saw absolutely everything firsthand. And I was, even though they're very advanced in Oregon, because even recreational it's been legal for quite a while. But I really saw the other side of it, I guess. With the stigma, people, they have been doing this for, I guess, over a decade legally for the last 7 to 8 years. But this has always been there. And then the other, sorry.
What were the challenges like when you kind of you decided, okay, I want to be a guy that's bringing in CBD?
Mm-hmm.
What did you have to do for the government or the regulators to be able to do that? Like, where in the journey does that happen?
Well, that happened maybe 3 years ago when I started doing, I guess, going through the legislation and making sure that I had to comply with the security side of things and with the legality side of things. So I have to get a warehouse where I need to have security camera, sites. I mean, the list is endless. So you just start approaching this and you start discovering that you need something else. And then, between the safes, that they need to be pretty much indestructible for like somebody trying to break into it. They need to be literally on that part of the law kind of say that somebody has to be literally trying to break into with a piece of equipment that they can be literally like 5 minutes hacking at it and trying to get. So the whole thing needs to be bolted to the ground. Like the security of it, but it needs to be that way. I mean, I'm glad that that is that way, because then it means that everything needs to follow protocols. And look, at the same time, if it was too easy, too many people would be doing it. And as I said, there are challenges, but just like in any other business, or I guess in any other job that you would do, so I suppose
any, like limitations that you've come across in terms of dealing with the TGA or the regulators?
Well, yes, but I guess everybody's learning on the go. Everybody's this is such a new thing, and if you think about this, if you really think about all of these, like almost 99.9% of the people that are in business right now, or 100% of the people, this drug has always been illegal. So it's since the moment that we were born, we knew bad things about this thing. So it kind of takes a lot of time for people to change their mind and to see evidence, and to really make sure that they say, well, no, what we have actually in all our lives is actually wrong. And there is now enough evidence out there that these compounds actually help people with this diverse range of disorders. So I suppose, yes, it is a little bit frustrating. And we have had instances that we spoke to, I guess, with personnel, and they don't really understand what the compounds are. But then, you have to put it all into perspective, because there are also humans that are learning this new drug, So I suppose it can be very tedious. It can be very sometimes frustrating, but I suppose, we have to also understand their side.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. I mean, it's a very slow moving legal and bureaucratic system that you're working with as well. So,
Yes, yes. But also, look, I'm very lucky because I can see the Australian legislation at the paces that it moves, and then I'm also working on parallel with a couple of business partners in Chile, and in Chile it's almost the same. The legislation is almost a mirror.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting.
But the legislations are mirrors, but then when it comes down to executing, you're dealing still with South America, and then you're dealing with Australia, and the difference is so big. Yeah, I can understand people being very frustrated or having issues with entities, but at the same time, when you can extrapolate it to different countries, I guess it's not bad at all.
The context is important for sure.
Correct. Yes.
What did you go into business prior to this business? Like, were you working in that space or?
No, look, my background in terms of business had always been food, and previous to food was pharmaceuticals, and was working for a family-owned business, and I can only speak very good things about them. They were great. We were doing a good job in terms of, we were bringing Australia imports pretty much, I don't know, 70 or 80% of our weed, it's imported. Like, I mean, before I worked in the food industry, I was like, I couldn't believe the numbers that, the country imports in, like, with all these different products, you name it, like almonds, walnuts, and all that sort of stuff. And then, as I mentioned to you, when I started all of this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was very much working in the food industry, and I also saw a light, like a different antenna, like speaking to me. Oh, like I always knew cannabis wasn't as bad as they painted it to be. So when the legislation changed, like I put myself through like hundreds of hours of, I guess, research at my own expense, because I knew that there was something in there, and the more I dig, the more I found, and the more I knew, the less I knew. It's kind of funny how we hear this all the time, that people said, oh, the more I dig into this, the less I think I know. But it is literally like that, because there is like the endocannabinoid system was only found in 1992 or something like that by Israeli doctor in conjunction with an American one. So even the doctors that we are actually talking to right now, they probably wouldn't know. They wouldn't even know about the cannabinoid system, because in their medical school, they probably were not taught about the endocannabinoid system. So
it's really interesting, because the last guest we had, Dr. Todd Sapritsky, basically said the same thing.
Oh, really? There you go.
He's like, not only do regular people not know about the ECS, most doctors don't really know much about it.
No, because it's not part of the curriculum that they are taught. Yeah. Like I have spoken to, it's funny that you mentioned that. I spoke to, like 3.5 years ago when all this started, I started speaking to my local GP. He's have a Chinese background and Australian, but parents are Chinese. And he's so funny. He was always very attentive, like he had ears for, like to listen, like, but at the beginning he would look at me like, what are you talking about? Like, what, this is marijuana? Is this marijuana? And it was like, yes, but it has, I would explain to him. And in the end, he started doing his own research, and he started prescribing as well, because and I always knew, like I did go to business school back home in Chile, and I remember having this professor back home saying that when you deal with Chinese, they are very slow in their take, and negotiations can take years. And I never saw this as a negotiation, because for me, it's my local GP, and I was just talking to him about the idea that I had, but he would look at me funny, you know. But then after the whole process, I thought about, well, it really takes a long time to I guess to convince somebody, and funnily enough, he was the first person who started prescribing our product. So yeah, and I think before you mentioned something about patients having a really good impact with the products. Currently, I have one of my neighbors. He had been diagnosed with prostate cancer probably more than 10 years ago. And very interesting person. He lived in Europe for 20 plus years, 10 years in Geneva. And in Geneva, he received a really good treatment against his prostate cancer. So it almost made it dormant for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. And now, only last year, towards the end of the year, it became alive again. And then he got tested. He got put into a big scan machine and pretty much scanned his whole body. And unfortunately, has, metastasized everywhere, and in his back and his brain. And because he started become from asymptomatic to, being very painful and hardly to even, he found hard to move and hard to walk and all these sort of daily things that we take for granted. And he went to his GP, and obviously he prescribed some opioids, as they usually do. And what happens is that this guy started, I guess, because I had met him for a few months prior when he wasn't on medication, I started seeing like a bit of a different behavior when he went into opioids. And the only way that I can describe it is that he was a little bit more loose, like he's a 70-plus-year-old person, and all of a sudden, and he wasn't happy either. He said that the pain was still there, like the whole problem was still there. So he actually went to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist, I had already spoken to him about CBD, but I didn't want to, push any further. So he went to speak to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist said to him, or suggested that he should try some alternative medicine, because opioids-based medication was not going to do anything for him because he hadn't been shot or stabbed. So he didn't see any improvements, and so the pharmacist, in other words, suggested an alternative medicine, and it's been like 12 days now that he's been without pain, like no pain, and he's been only on a 4% water-soluble CBD oil. And it's water soluble, and we find that it has a really good effect on people because there is a lack of volatility of the product. So in other words, you can get maximum absorption if it is water-based as if it are oil-based. Yes.
Okay. I haven't heard of water-based CBD at all. I've only ever heard of
yes.
it in oils, capsules, things like that, but I've never really heard of it being diluted in a water.
Yeah, it's they use the hydroxy compound for it, and they had some other they had some curcuminoids to this CBD oil, to this recipe. And our suppliers is out of Europe, and it's one of their most popular products because of the absorption of the product. I mean, you can get you can have it with tea or with juice or in a glass of water,
Yeah,
so
I've always just been used to the oils. I've had maybe 2-3 years ago, I had some isolate like as a dab.
yeah.
That was That was interesting, right?
And just CBD or?
Just CBD, just CBD.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, that was really, really interesting. It was probably the most clear-headed I think I've ever felt, other than maybe after a really deep meditation. It was just
Yes.
like, you finish smoking and it's just like almost like a pop, and it's like, and your just mind just completely clear. I've never been so clear-headed in my life, I think.
Oh, really? Wow.
And
I have
that's
actually, yeah.
that like I don't think is talked about at all. And I had that from someone who has like very chronic pain and epilepsy. So he had that, and it helps with him like a lot. Like he doesn't get any seizures anymore or anything. But because of the
Yeah.
chronic pain, he wants to always be kind of like on that higher concentrate end.
That is something that we have access to. 99.9% of CBD purity in powder form. We haven't actually prescribed it yet, but it is something that
Is it allowed to be prescribed?
Yeah, well, yes, because I mean it's the compound, so that is allowed to be prescribed. So I suppose it wouldn't make a difference if it is diluted in oil or if it is pure. I think the most critical part when it comes to the prescription, it's that it needs to be clear how the doctor prescribes it and how the dosage needs to be. Because, for example, and this happened only last week, we were prescribing to one of our patients, and one of our oils, specifically the water soluble one, 4%, it comes in with a pump rather than a spray. So I think the doctor wrote spray rather than pump. So the TGA wrote back saying if she could actually clarify, if it was a pump or a spray, and how much per pump it was, as in terms of the milligrams of CBD per pump. So I think the most important part of it all is that when the doctor dosage is right. Yeah, correct. So yeah,
that's the biggest thing they've been trying to push, from what I've seen on the problems with medical cannabis. They're like, how do you get a patient to dose correctly? And for me, like when I started on the program, the doctor kind of started me on 0.2 mil, and then we worked up to 0.3 and then 0.4. And it was like, where do you find like your happy balance? And I find it somewhere in between 0.3, 0.4. Days where I'm really maybe having just a stressful time, maybe I'll just take a bit more, like 0.67 even.
And that is milligrams, or is that oil, or is that
oil? That would be, I think it's 0.1 is 10 milligrams. So like I'm typically taking 40 milligram, and then on like a bad day, I'll take like 70, maybe twice.
Right.
And I take 40 twice per day normally.
Right. Yeah.
So but yeah, it was like a little bit of a process in the first few months, kind of just talking about to the doctor, like, how did it go for you? Do you need to up it? Do you need to lower it? And that sort of thing. With CBD, I've never really found, if I have too much, I don't feel like it like impacts me. But if I have too little, then I notice that like, well, I didn't have enough.
Yes.
Too much scale, I never really feel anything too, like, I mean, there's no psychoactive effects. There's none of that.
No. And that is actually, it's a good point, because like, for example, it is, it is funny how different governments look at this compound, because in the EU, in the European Union, they see this not as a medicine, they see it as a
supplement,
as a food supplement. So obviously, it all, the perspective is everything. And but I guess from the angle that it needs to be well dosed and all that sort of stuff, what they're trying to do, and I think they're being very methodical here in Australia, is the dose part, and also it's important so they can really come up with formulas, I guess, and I say, these levels, they affect you this much. It's all about evidence, and it's all about being, I guess, more in control of the substance. And then but this is endless. Like, have you thought about like driving and all this sort of stuff? I don't think. What do you know about that, Josip? Because you are always talking to different people in the industry.
Yeah.
So
The driving stuff, like, I mean, there's a big campaign rolling on at the moment called Drive Change. That's headed up by Tom Brown at Honolly, and Lucy Haslam, and Fiona Patton, I think, is also backing it. And that's basically a bill that's being pushed forward for medical cannabis users to be somewhat exempt from roadside testing if they test positive to THC. They're trying to make it that a saliva test is not enough evidence to say that the person is impaired. Makes a lot of sense, because a lot of us, you know, we probably have THC in our system all the time, even if we're not stoned, high, whatever you want to say, medicated even. Like,
yes,
it's been 12 hours, 24 hours, and there's no effect on it, on me, in my system.
correct.
Saliva test is going to say otherwise, and having THC in my body isn't going to do any of that. But anyway, where it's all kind of heading is hopefully that will get the laws kind of changed and all of that. The problem, I think, is like with CBD, for example, unless you're getting a pure isolate CBD that's not full spectrum or broad spectrum, you're going to potentially come up on a test for THC, even though there was maybe 1 to 3% THC in your oil. And the only reason it was in there is because it helps with the CBD, with the entourage effect, and
Correct.
the endocannabinoid system going. So the question is, would someone potentially test positive while driving with just CBD? That I'm really interested to see if a case like that has come out or will come out or something like that, because I think that
Yeah.
precedence.
Yes, and I look, in theory, if the oils that people are importing, even if they're full spectrum for the entourage effect, the because everything is so regulated. So basically, the difference between the full spectrum, broad spectrum, and isolate, the difference is, if it is full spectrum, it has to have up to 0.05% or 0.02%. So, and that is, if all the oils that are entering to the country and they are being well manufactured as per they say that these oils are, then I don't think we should see any cases on the road being done by just CBD oil. That is kind of like my take. Looking at it from manufacturing point of view, because it's very, very minimal, the amount of THC. Now, for a product to be called broad spectrum, it has all the terpenes, all the CBG, all the CBN compounds, minus the THC, even though in that small 0.02% that it is when it's called full spectrum. And then you have the isolates. And in my opinion, well, the isolates are probably the cheapest CBD out there. And that is only for a couple of reasons, I guess. It's because all the other compounds are extracted, but also its CBD isolate can also be made out in the lab chemically. So we'll see, I guess, just like in the European Union, we will see a lot of isolate CBD, just because it's the cheapest, the cheapest option for people. But also,
in Australia towards, like, it seems like in the cannabis community in general, beyond
yes,
money. I mean, the money is a pull, of course.
Yes.
There's like a real push towards broad spectrum and full spectrum oils, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. And I'm only talking about this is because, not for what I have seen here, it's more so from our partners in Europe, that they they have seen this a long time ago, because I mean the Netherlands had been doing this for over a decade. So and it's a big market. So and when there is a big market, then these kind of things happen. And I'm only saying it because from that point of view, and from that point of view is, I guess, is we will expect to see when those products, when all of these become more mainstream. But I don't think we will see them until further down the track, when oils become over the counter and all that sort of stuff.
Well,
Yes.
speaking of over the counter, have you
Yes.
looked into the over the counter laws, and are you trying to get yours to be available over the counter?
That'd be cool.
Yes, we are actually. But as everybody probably have heard or read lately, it shouldn't happen in less than 12 months, I'll say. And we just, as a company, we have received a quote from an external organization to do all this scheduling from 4 to 3, and from becoming a prescription medication to becoming over the counter. And it takes probably about 18 months for a company to do this. Now, it takes for about 18 months because of a couple of reasons. So you have to do a validation test to the product, and that lasts about 6 months or 6 months. So basically what it is you check your product at day 1, and then you check the product at the end of the month 6, and the results of, I guess, the active compound needs to be spot on as from the moment you started the whole exercise. And then there is about 12 months for the TGA to review all the paperwork, which is pretty extensive. It's about the literature, it's about the claims that you can actually make. You have to present a dossier of, it's substantial. It's a big project, but we will do it because we will see. I have seen with my own eyes. I have traveled also to Canada, and the Canadian they have been doing this for over a decade as well. And there is more than just chemicals to I guess to help people, and I see that very clearly, and I see the big picture, and I think it's I think it needs to be done.
No, it's just it was such a depressing thing when they say it's like CBD is legalized over the counter, and you have stories of people going in and going, oh, is CBD available here, to like Chemist Warehouse or something, and they're like, nope, not yet. And like I've heard like maybe 20, 30 people tell me these things, and it's like, and then I have to give them the kind of rundown. Yes, it was, but you have to wait probably 12 to 18 months if you're lucky.
Yes.
Maybe it will actually pop up. But in saying that, it's like, while it was, big leap forward, it was probably 2 steps back, but maybe we went 3 forward. So we're a step ahead.
I think so. Yeah. And also talking about clickbait, right? It's all about reading the news and selling headlines,
That's
I guess.
what upsets me probably most, because you have politicians that are like, they're gonna just tell us that it's been legalized, it's all good, it's here, we've done it for the people.
Same with the existing medical cannabis scheme. It doesn't need to be improved. We already did it.
Everything's perfect. It couldn't run any better. And like I think about it, and I'm like, I don't even understand why. Like, you've got the restrictions. Like, I have to call the doctor to book myself the ability to get a refill on my scripts, right? Like, I have to waste a doctor's time for that. I think a doctor has more important things to do than do that, but they can't give you an amount of repeats, right? They can't. Can
they not give you? How many repeats can they give you?
None. For at least my clinic. So the idea is they kind of prescribe you every time.
Pretty much.
But I think that's a business model, my friend, because we we do give our patients repeats.
I think with CBD, it's a little easier, but I think if you're going towards the flower and the THC oil, I think there's a lot of TGA restrictions around.
I think you're actually spot on that, because THC, it becomes Schedule 8, and then it's on par with heroin and all these other heavy drugs. So, yep. So basically, they are two different compounds.
But it's just crazy how much inefficiency it is on like doctors' time, you know, like they could be seeing more patients, but instead they have to see existing patients to be like, yep, it worked for you. Cool. I'll write you a script because it keeps working for you.
And for the patients, they have to turn up to the doctor to go through that whole process every time.
Well, it's a phone call, which is okay, but it's the fact that, you know, you have to go through.
But you have to pay as well, yeah? Well, obviously, you know, everybody, I mean, I guess the times of doctors, it has to be remunerated. So
yeah, well, the doctor has to be paid as well, and because it's obviously not covered by Medicare.
No,
some private health funds can cover some bits.
Yes.
But like most of them, when I've seen, like they can cover you for maybe $350 to $500 a year, so it's like $50 off each appointment or something, or off your medicines. But it's like, cool, I'm saving $500 a year, but I'm spending $1,000 every time I get the medicine. So if I'm doing that every 2 months, you know, $500 a year isn't really much of a saving on the private health on top of the cost of the private health.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think is probably my issue. I just don't think doctors need to be the ones prescribing the flower. I feel like doctors need to prescribe you the ability to get cannabis, but then I think there should be specialists in deciding, you know, like, and helping you. It could be the nurses, for example, and they're the ones who help you decide what flowers and your dosing and all that. Why does a doctor need to do that?
So if like authorized prescribers could like broaden out, probably have like a much more accessible medicinal cannabis space in Australia.
Yes.
Because the other thing we all see is how many of these clinics are looking for doctors? Every single one of them. There's not enough doctors.
No,
they're all
overbooked. But the problem, I think that when you look at that also, is because all these doctors have been only alive while this thing has been illegal, and it has been literally zero. What would you call this? There is no really an incentive for them to be educated about all of this, because it has always been illegal, right? So, but I get your point. And because they're so far and few in between these doctors that are actually interested, we are kind of experiencing that there are not many doctors. But you know what? This is going to change. And it's going to change slowly but surely. And the more clinicians, the more GPs that start doing this, they're going to start seeing, and because the government is being very systematical about their approach, they're going to be able to. And I think, like, personally, because I see all from with foreigners, I guess, eyes, I see that the communication from the government to the people is actually amazing here in this country. You know, they're always working towards something. If it's no road infrastructure, you see the sites updated all the time. They're always working towards, like, I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, I started working on all of this, and constantly they're, you know, renewing the information on their websites. It's always very, very forward. I've been very fortunate to be able to be even brought up in South America, where everything is backwards. You just go two forward, and then you go 4 backwards, you know.
We do have good systems here in Australia. I guess the police are people holding us back.
Yes. No. It's amazing. So, I hear you, but also I think it's just you know, I think in a very short period of time, this will change. And, you know, hopefully what we saw earlier on last year in New Zealand, hopefully happens here soon, and then they soon will realize what the people really want, you know, because at the end of the day, a government can put a blind eye on what people need and what people want, right? So, and as I said before, these are very progressive societies where everything matters, and people are in the forefront, kind of making arrangement to the legislation. Yeah, I think we'll be surprised how quick this will happen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Where
Especially in the CBD space.
the CBD space, 100%. That will
Yes.
happen. The medical cannabis, recreational, debatable. I think the medical will pick
How
up.
long do you think, Joseph?
For which? Recreational or?
Yes, recreational.
Until a government changes, Mauricio.
And what about you? Sorry, I forgot your name.
Mitch. Yeah, I just said
Mitch.
we'll wait until the government changes, the federal government, because they're way too antagonistic at the moment for things to change.
I don't think we'll ever see a recreational market legalized by a liberal party on the federal level.
That's all I'm saying.
They're not the party to do it.
Malcolm Turnbull was an enigma in the sense that he created the existing medicinal cannabis scheme.
Yeah, the problem is Malcolm Turnbull, his wife owns like a huge amount of P Fizzer shares.
That's true.
She's so in bed with P Fizzer, it's like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And
what is that institution? I'm not familiar with them. What is that institution? I'm not familiar with them.
Pfizer's a big pharma.
Oh, Pfizer. Yeah.
I call it P Fizzer because I'm an idiot.
Yes. Okay.
But you know, Turnbull was probably one of the only hopes the Liberal Party had to do it.
But he got kicked out because he was too pro-climate
change
and stuff like that.
Yeah. But I personally think by 25 we will have probably a legal state. I think if we do, it'll probably be Victoria.
Yeah, Queensland could be a legal state, but it might actually take longer than other states.
The problem I think we've got with Queensland is, while we are a Labor state at the moment, is Palaszczuk, yeah.
But Labor is good, yeah?
Labor's good, but centrist.
You know, they're
very moderate.
They're not pushing for much.
They've got to have, there's like two narratives. You've got the narrative of Southeast Queensland and the urban areas, and then you've got the narrative of the regional Queensland.
And what is that? What are the difference between the two?
The difference is that in Southeast Queensland, you want to see action on climate change, complete restructuring of the energy grid, leaping into the 21st century in a lot of progressive ways, making economic reforms and welfare reforms and technology reforms. So a lot of that is based upon, a long-standing kind of base progressive agenda. Then you've got on the other end, working class people in the sticks who are increasingly seeing less economic opportunity because it's all in the cities.
Yes.
And they are really scared that the existing traditional economic model that is set up there is going to be crushed by the pressures of the city. Like the fact that you've got runaway climate change, a lot of them just straight up deny it because they are coal miners or iron ore miners, and so there's this culture that exists within, regional areas, which is particularly focused on economic prosperity. Whereas in the urban areas, it's about environmental sustainability, regenerative cultures.
Yeah. And which one do you line more towards, Mitch?
Well, I think that you need to do both. You actually need to bring the regional areas. If you have a progressive government and you want to have action on climate change, you don't capitulate to the coal lobby, the resources lobby, the existing economic interests. Instead, you go, okay, we're going to restructure the entire economy. We're going to invest billions of dollars into the regional areas. We're going to have people move into those areas, and we're going to completely reinvest into these economies in new ways. So new industries will be set up, people will be reskilled, et cetera, et cetera. That just hasn't happened, and the Labor government hasn't tried to do it. So
I think where I was going to lead with it wasn't that end.
Yeah, sorry.
But for me, with Palaszczuk, she very much to me appeals as like a mother. She really, really has that mother kind of vibe. And I think as a result, like the whole drug talk, a mum saying, yeah, we're going to legalize cannabis to other mums, it's just not going to work well for her image.
Yeah, she's got a very
she's not the person to push it through
type vibe going on. And I think that's because she's not to be, mean or anything, but she's kind of got like a very public service type vibe. Like she's somebody who you would expect in education or health, like a carer.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's the premier, and she has to make tough decisions. So
it doesn't actually suit her personality.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the problem. But in saying that, we have 2 Greens members in Queensland now, which is pretty, I think that's historic. I don't know if we've ever had that.
We've never had that.
We've never had 2 Greens members.
So,
Queensland and Brisbane itself is quite progressive.
Yeah.
In the south, but as soon as you move out, you've got to deal with bigger problems.
But it's 2 people like kind of enough for them to make things happen, or still a small percentage of the...
It definitely can get a conversation started, at least. You know, they're the only ones that are properly going to be like, hey, we should legalize cannabis, and they can keep poking, you know, going,
I see what you're saying.
This? And then maybe at one time there's going to be some opportunity where Labor needs them to sign on for something, and they can maybe use that as leverage for, can we relax the laws regarding cannabis, even if it was like a decriminalization level, you know, like
ideally Labor gets wedged between the LNP and the Greens, and they have to do something with the Greens to address cannabis reform.
You know, that's kind of the hope, but the Greens also have their own agenda of other things that are more important. So
yeah, that's right. Actually, don't put cannabis first. So.
This is the Greens, right?
I thought it was the Green Party. I thought everything was green. I thought the green was a priority.
But it is what it is. And Northern Territory also has apparently a really high chance of legalizing. It would do for their youth crime, you know, they wouldn't get incarcerated and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have ACT, but what I like, if we remember back to 2000 and I think it was 6, where they legalized gay marriage in the ACT, and then it got removed like in a day or 2.
What does that mean? Like it got passed and then it got...
Yeah, well, because I think it's like the federal government was like, no, you can't do that.
It was actually the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court. There we go.
Oh, but Mitch, you love politics, Mitch. I can tell.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he does.
I
studied it at uni.
Oh, did you? How old are you, Mitch?
Sorry, what was that?
How old are you?
Oh, 23.
23. You have a very young face, young man.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm living it up while I
can. But where I was going to go with, in 2006, they legalized an ACT gay marriage, got removed in a few days, whatever. But how many years later did gay marriage come into effect?
Couple years.
In all of Australia. In all of Australia.
But there
is like 10 years, wasn't it?
That was a couple years.
No.
ACT happened in like 20...
No, but across Australia.
Yeah.
Australia gay marriage.
Josip got competitive.
Turnbull.
Yeah, I know it was Turnbull, but it was 2017, right? So 9 years. We legalized cannabis last year. So 2029, we'll have cannabis federally legalized in Australia.
No, because it was actually 2016, Joseph. If you go by that, then we will be 2005, right? No, so 2014.
2028.
No, because didn't you say that it's like 9 years after the fact?
8-9 years, yeah. And
9 years. So if it happened
1 year ago.
ACT, yes.
So 2028 for federal legalization. Canberra, ACT is the testing ground, and then they'll move it across the whole country within 10 years.
Well, look, what's a decade between friends?
Well, let's see if we can do it quicker.
I reckon, you know what? I reckon it will happen quicker for a few reasons. Because actually, funnily enough, I saw this post that it was done by somebody, and he posted that they made predictions about, in 1950, they made predictions about 2020 predictions about that everybody was going to be entertained by small devices and everything was going to happen at home. And if you think about all of, sorry?
Far off at all.
No, not far. And what we have heard about all this technology that increases anxiety and that increases all these type of behaviors that we aren't supposed to do. And therefore humans become anxious, they become nervous, we have too much dopamine in our system. So hopefully all of that is going to help to bring what we were talking before forward a lot quicker, and not 10 years, Josip.
Potentially you'll see a mental health revolution.
That's gonna happen at some point.
Look, I think it's crazy what's happening. Like, it's obviously nobody talks about it because it's not sexy. It's no, doesn't, bring you views or whatnot. But when this started to happen, as in like the pandemic sort of stuff, I straight away and went to see videos about isolation. And isolation is not good, my friend.
No, not good.
Isolation is what you do to people when they go to prison and they misbehave in prison.
That's right.
So when all this started happening, I was like, wow, this is just like a human experiment. Like, it's very difficult to not to have a reaction when you have already done how many like studies in jails when people actually literally go crazy in these isolation rooms, and we can't expect anything good out of this.
Right. Well, particularly in this society, which is already quite alienating and isolating, even
Yes.
functioning well.
Yes.
You all of a sudden are like, all right, stay in your little tiny houses and don't leave.
Yes.
That does create serious problems. And you've seen,
of course,
conspiracy theories erupt and emerge out of the dissatisfaction that people have with the current situation. I don't think a lot of that anger and dissatisfaction is unwarranted at all, because we don't have the systems in place to take care of people right now.
No.
Even if they're well and don't have COVID, they do need care.
Yeah, I mean, as I had mentioned to you, Joseph, my wife is a health worker. She works for Ambulance Victoria down here in Melbourne, and look, luckily enough, she's not down on the road anymore. She's not on the ambulance, on the truck, as I call it. But for a good 5 years before Luca was born, she worked on the emergency services, and probably 90% of the calls from people are from mental health. Mental health issues, it's huge, and that was when there was no pandemic going on.
Wow.
How
it is now,
yeah, and the drug of choice is alcohol.
Yeah, and it's legal and cheap and everywhere.
Oh well,
Not that cheap anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but I mean, alcoholics drink very cheap, to be honest, Joseph. And I know a few cases, sadly enough, they go through just casket wine. It's not about enjoying the drink. It's about it's literally about spacing out and just being drunk all day, and as cheap as they can do it, they do it. It's sad. It is very sad, because when I started doing this research, I think it puts more than 100,000 people in hospital on yearly basis in Australia.
Wow.
So the system suffers so much just because people don't know really what to do. Like, obviously, all these people are actually suffering not from something that you can go to the GP for, like it's all, yeah, exactly.
There's this sense that when people are grinding for certain metrics in the human economy and in our society, we neglect other essential aspects when we focus very thoroughly on like growing 3.5% a year every year. Like, there are certain things that we just don't take into account because they're not as important to us. If we continue down that road, we're going to see great loss, I think, and great suffering continue.
And that's exactly how the whole pandemic is approached. It's approached with a very narrow vision. The narrow vision is all about safety, but safety like in brackets, because they don't talk about anything else but being at home. They don't talk about anything else but they could talk about so many more things, like to try to
opportunity to restructure things.
Society, yeah, correct.
Listen, We've been talking for an hour. We're ending on a little bit of a depressive note.
It is a bit of a sad note.
But
you know,
but
it's
this is the problem we've got.
it's reality.
It is.
I think it's just a case of, if you can give some people some weed, they're probably going to be a little happier in isolation.
Yeah, well, 100%.
But it's I think the modern way of looking forward to the next 100 years and everything, it's like, how are we going to address all of the mental health issues that have kind of come up to the surface? And I think cannabis plays a big part in it, but I don't think it's like the be all and end all. It's definitely not a solution. I think it's more like, I look at cannabis as kind of for people, right? As a tool. You need to cope sometimes. Went through a bad breakup, someone died, something like this. You might need something that like numbs you, but you don't want it to be alcohol. You don't want it to be opiates. You don't want it to be crack. I don't know.
No.
You want some option to kind of help you understand your feelings, your thoughts, and everything. And there's nothing better than cannabis, right? For that, it lets you
maybe psychedelics.
If you were going through real trauma, you really wouldn't want a psychedelic.
I mean,
right?
That's true as well.
It's just too much.
Yeah, I mean, psychedelics, I think they are good. They're good. I don't have experience with them, but I have read a good book about Dr. Hoffman, and
nice.
You really start seeing a pattern on people that use psychedelics. But I don't think psychedelics can be put in the same category as weed.
Nope.
Because I think, even though I don't have any experience with them, I know that the people that have experience with them, they would use it every day or every second day or once a month. It's an experience. It's too intense, right? It's almost way too intense. So
that being said, I feel like psychedelics have an effect that goes far beyond the onset. Once you've taken anything, it kind of lasts for life. That's my opinion on psychedelics. You don't come out the same the other way.
It gives you a new,
profound
everything
experience.
It doesn't even have to be profound. It really doesn't.
No,
it's not always. It can
it's
be
not always
very
profound,
and it will make you think about things in a whole new way. Like
that in itself is profound.
Yeah.
In a way. So,
but it's like a revelation. It doesn't need to be profound, but it needs to be kind of like I
self-discovery, really.
Yeah, it's kind of self-discovery. It's kind of like the best way to put it.
Even though you can do it more regularly, I think the introspective quality of cannabis feels like a light or a very mild psychedelic that you can expose yourself to more.
Yeah. I think cannabis is, your daily psychedelic.
Pretty much.
It's like you couldn't take acid every single day, but you can definitely take a little bit of cannabis every day to reconnect. But,
correct.
Is that to say that having cannabis every day is good?
We don't actually know.
We don't know.
I
personally think probably not, but I don't know. It helps me function. It helps me go about my day. It doesn't really hinder me too much.
But look, I don't think. Yeah, and besides, it's only a little grass. It's not so much. And every now and then, if it makes you feel reconnected, if it makes you feel a little bit happier, why not? And it's literally has a lot less side effects than alcohol. That's for sure, which is widely used and widely promoted.
Why not?
Exactly. Why not? Exactly. Why not?
Yeah. Okay. I think that's good. We can leave it there. And thank you for having a chat. And we'll have Mauricio's wife on soon, who's a nurse, who can kind of go more into the mental health aspects. Come on soon. Cool.
Yes, please. Yeah. Thank you so much. And we'll see you soon.